Hello, everyone. I am delighted once again to be presenting at Regnum International School of Chaplaincy and the International Association of Chaplains. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I am Dr. Anita Mckaney from Cleveland, Ohio, and I am going to share with you about how religion affects your health, how religion affects your health. This month, we're looking at humanity and religion. And so I want to let you know, maybe to your surprise or perhaps not, but religion can have various effects on your actual physical health. And research has actually explored this relationship. And since I'm a nursing professor and I like to dive into research topics, this intrigued me. Various sources many sources concur that if someone believes in God, they are more likely to live a longer and a healthier life. If you attend church services, if you prescribe to yourself to religious activities, you are more likely to have a lessened mortality and live longer, happier, and healthier. So, even a belief in an afterlife increases people's hopefulness and lessens their fear of death. So, those who attend religious gatherings, those who get with other people in religious circles and attend services often even have better mental health. And here are some other key findings. Actively religious people tend to describe themselves as very happy far more often than their less religious peers and counterparts. Did you know that? And that's not just in my country of America, but in several countries. Notable happiness gaps exist between the actively religious, the inactively religious, and unaffiliated with religion individuals. So, actively religious people are more likely to engage in community activities, to volunteer, to help their neighbor, to do other things for other people, and thereby making them better citizens, contributors to society, which increases their longevity and actually gives them a higher quality of life. The connection between religiosity, and I say it that way because there's many religions in chaplaincy, but the connection between religiosity and overall health is actually becoming more and more clear with the research. In the United States, in Mexico, and in Taiwan specifically, they've studied this more. And your actively religious people report better health than others. It's just one thing that we're beginning to see. However, religiosity does not impact a couple of things that actually tell us about health. Those things being obesity and those who exercise. Just because you're religious doesn't mean that you exercise more frequently or that you're less likely to get fat. You actually, those are two things that are very much individualized for the person. But overall, your health is better if you are a religious person, is what studies are beginning to show. So, I actually have a couple of things I want to read to you. Researchers from Ohio State University conducted two surveys studying more than 1,500 newspaper obituaries, first from my state of Ohio and then from all across the United States. In both of these samples, the study showed that those with documented religious affiliations in their obituaries lived an average of 5 to 9 years longer, respectively, than those who did not. Interesting. Now, let's talk about some unhealthy behaviors. We kind of explored healthy behaviors that you see with people who are religious. Let's talk about some unhealthy things. Actively religious individuals are less likely to smoke, right? Use nicotine and to drink, to participate in illegal drug activity. It's just less likely. Think about how people talk about the Ten Commandments: thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. And so people are less likely to do those things. Religions often discourage unhealthy behaviors as a whole. This leads to lower smoking rates among the actively religious. It leads to less likely for them to be homicidal. It leads to less likelihood of doing things that are detrimental to your health and thereby increasing your lifespan. And so religious persons are also less likely to be disruptive. They're more likely to do what makes for peace. They're more likely to be peaceful individuals or to resolve conflicts more quickly than our non religious counterparts. Very interesting. But that's not all. Also, one thing that you will note if you are a Bible reader is that there are medical applications from the Christian Bible that actually are forerunners to much of the medicine that we see in current practice. The Christian worldview of medicine emphasizes both spiritual and physical health. So, for example, in the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament in the Bible, the priests were spiritual and healthcare workers for their communities. Specific instructions were given for many types of problems that people experienced physically. Things like dysentery, when they had stomach problems, diarrhea issues, all of these kinds of things. And when people are experiencing leprosy or other types of skin conditions, they were told to be apart from the community for a certain amount of time, to use certain applications. There were actually specific directions given for certain oils to be used under certain circumstances. There's also a whole instruction for monthly hygiene practices for women in specific. And so we see that this is not brand new to the religious community to be concerned about your physical health. In other words, God not only wants your soul, but your body as well. And so while the Bible doesn't directly address current medical technology and modern medical devices, the principles guide our ethical and spiritual and physical decision making so that we can live healthy lives and thereby help other people to live healthy spiritual lives. Reverend Kevin Manoa, who's a PhD graduate and faculty chaplain at Azusa Pacific University, emphasized this importance when he says, I've noticed an increase in the acknowledgement of the role of spirituality in the health sciences. And I think that's a positive and important trajectory, he says. The field of healthcare sees a growing need to treat people holistically, paying attention to the whole being, body, mind, and soul. The Ohio State study that he participated in measured the tangible practice of going to church and how it relates to mortality. Manoa says, I would take that to a deeper level and say that a spiritually healthy participation in a local church means that I become permeable and vulnerable to others. I enter into a relationship of mutuality with others, and that mentality reminds me that I am not alone. And it reminds me of my place in God's story. Manoa says he thinks there is more to longevity than just healthy practices, and that we can't relegate the spiritual aspect of our lives to merely Sundays. Getting at the issue, he says, I think it's not merely activities that cause longevity of life. Activities are the outcome of healthy spirituality in relationship to God. Manoa says, so what causes these outcomes? It is the deep peace or the shalom of God. Those practices, prayer, volunteer work, meditation, church attendance, these are all evidences of a healthy, integrated, and balanced life. That's the way God intended for us to live, unquote. So, in summary, religious persons, religious activities, all of these kinds of things can impact your happiness, your community engagement, and certain health behaviors. I mentioned smoking, drinking, drugs, the likelihood to be homicidal, the increased likelihood to be a person of peace. And so while the Bible doesn't prescribe specific current medical technologies and practice in its application, the world view informs our ethical practices as it relates to healthcare and taking care of our bodies regularly. So, in conclusion, I want to say this statement to you, and I want you to be thinking about it before we come back next month. I want you to be thinking about this statement. Our humanity and our religiosity are not mutually exclusive. They are actually interdependent. And so, as we think about that, I want to think about perhaps changes I will make in my life. Perhaps you will think about changes you will make in your life. And of course, those who you serve as a chaplain. I want to thank you so much for this time. I enjoyed being here with all of you. And my prayer is that you will be both spiritually and bodily healthy. God bless you. Until next month. Bye bye.